Good day, everyone. This is Susette Chang with Thick Descriptions, where we disrupt traditional educational methods with anthropology. And this is our Elephant in the Room podcast. Uh, I guess this is my left, is Dr. Robin Miles, who will be co-hosting this podcast with me. And I refer to her as Dr. R. Dr. R, would you like to say any more about yourself?
No, I'm just super excited to be here, Larry. It's great to meet you, and maybe a little bit about myself. My background is in human resources. I'm an executive coach. I do organizational development work, and so that's kind of the lens through which I see the world and how I integrate cultural anthropology into my work.
Yes. And everyone, this is Dr. Larry White. I will speak a little bit and I want you to go a little bit deeper of what you do. He is a librarian extraordinaire, has a very strong background in leadership and storytelling, and thought that he would be a really cool person to interview as he understands the power of cultural anthropology in the work he does in leadership and libraries. But Larry, tell folks a little bit about you.
Um, where to start? I am a storyteller, but my background has been in a lot of leadership and management. I've got over 40 years of supervision experience and working with the public. So I get to see a lot of what society does. And I have a few things that I do in life that describe what I do. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is a tag that I give myself called student of life. And I spend a lot of time watching the world around me so that I can learn from how people do things, how people don't do things, and how people interact. And so I spend a lot of time just being a student of life.
Cool, cool. So that prompts a question for me within the framework of leadership. Um, and you just touched on you being an observer or a participant observer. How do you see observation within the context of leadership?
I see it as very key. I think it's essential to see at different degrees around you. For example, there are some behaviors and leadership that it's important to be within feet of when it happens so that you can not only see what happens, hear what happens, but you can feel what happens.
Mm.
You can see the body language, you can see the reactions, you can hear the tones and the voices. And so at close range, you're going to learn a lot of tacit knowledge about management. You're also going to learn a lot about the person who is doing the management. If you're looking more at like a room length or thereabout, you're not hearing, but you're much more watching in terms of mannerisms, behaviors, what actions they take. Because oftentimes with leaders, it's not about what you say, it's what about you do.
Mm.
And so watching what people do and watching what they don't do.
Mm.
Sometimes what people omit in their behavior, especially as leaders, is more powerful and more impacting than what they do. If you fail to acknowledge someone in need, if you fail to live up to a promise that you've made. You know, my grandfather used to have this phrase, trust. Trust is earned every day, everything you do and everything you say.
Mm.
And you have to earn it all over every day.
Mm.
And so, you know, it's really key and critical when you're observing people that you not only observe what they've said they're going to do, but you observe what they did do.
Mm.
And that will tell you a lot about the leadership style and the person who is executing leadership.
Mm. That's I'm you just said a lot, and I'm really leaning into the component of trust. So you don't think that trust is built over time
It
versus
is.
okay.
Trust can be earned over time, but all it takes is one major setback to cause you to slide backward. And
Mm,
then you've got to recover. You
hmm
know, I don't know how many mistakes I've made in 40 some years of working with people. I've made a lot. And being, quick to acknowledge it and quick to restore it is a good thing. In my last position, one of the things that the people I worked with noted was that when I did make a mistake, I owned it, and that I immediately worked to correct it and not just get it right, but also make it right with the people that I may have disappointed with the mistake.
mm
So you can earn trust, and if life is great and everything's good, you will have this high level of trust.
hmm
And when bad things happen at that level, sometimes when you have a high level of trust, it diminishes the impact of the negative event. But sometimes if your trust levels are in the median or maybe below where other aspects of your leadership are, a bad incident can destroy that trust
mm
very quickly.
mm
Uh, and so, yes, it feeds, but you can lose it very quickly and have to restore it, given a severe enough impact in the environment around you.
mm mm
So it's a mixture of the two.
How do you incorporate storytelling in earning people's trust?
Storytelling and trust. Storytelling goes back to when there was two people on the planet, Mog and Og, and they were trading off where they found what to eat and what animal to stay away from. It started simple. And storytelling is an innate connection to people.
hmm
When I tell stories, I can help provide leadership and life lessons in ways that are more digestible, that connect more to the person and the qualities that they have.
hmm
Um, if you come in spouting, your 57 slide PowerPoint, people tend to just kind of shut up. And once they view it, if you ask them 10 minutes later what they saw, they don't remember. But if I tell you a story, we remember stories. They're part of the cultural artifacts that we generate through our life. And so being able to tell a good story often will open doors. Um, I've been in different places around the world and bumped into people and started sharing a story. Sometimes I'm talking in English and they're talking in another language, but we understand that it's a story.
hmm
And so they listen, I listen. It is a way of opening doors
hmm
that just other forms of communication may not always do.
hmm I want to shift really quickly back to, and it's they're all connected of cultural anthropology and leadership. Um, and side note, we have a copy of your CV slash resume, and so very long history, as you said, 40 years, right, of experience and different aspects and capacities of library leadership. Um, where do you see libraries going, more specifically, like public libraries within the context of public spaces?
Sure. Um, I've actually given this a little thought. Um, so I see three things between libraries and cultural anthropology. I see public libraries as sites of cultural preservation and transmission. So places where um, the living cultural practices are able to be observed, interpreted, to be able to share tradition, to share knowledge. All of these things are places, are things that could occur in a library.
Mhm.
And so I think as libraries go along, I think they're going to become more of these cultural preservation and transmission laboratories. I think they're going to be places where people come together to learn how to do these things because we have so much of a disconnect, high speed society right now that I think people are starting to realize that they need that connectivity. They need that interrelation with other people and not in a 5-second soundbite, but in a longer, meaningful way. And libraries have long been a third place in society, with home as your first and work as your second. Libraries are frequently a common third place. So it is a safe space for many people, and it's a common space for many people. So I think it lends itself well to being in that capacity. So that's the first thought. The second thought is public libraries would serve as ethnographic observation and engagement spaces. So this is places where you could do informal ethnographic field studies on human behavior, interaction, meaning making, sense making could be observed and understood in real time. I think that that is a real valuable asset, not only to anthropologists, but I think it's a valuable asset to um, people in general.
Mhm.
I just, I hate to self-aggrandize here for a second, but I put out a story on my Corner Storyteller today, and the story is called The Anthropology on Your Front Porch. And it's a story about how the front porch serves as an anthropology lab.
Mhm.
And I think the library is also one of those places where it is an observable lab where you can see people who would never have connection, never have interactions in any other way except for in that library environment. So I think public libraries as ethnographic observation and engagement spaces is the second thing that connects libraries. And I think the third thing is public libraries as agents of cultural mediation and social adaptation. So, public libraries act as cultural mediators. They help individuals and groups navigate transitions between social, cultural, economic, and information systems. Um, it's a one of those, as I understand it, and I don't necessarily have a background in anthropology. I just read a lot. And one of the things that I think I've discerned from the literature of anthropology is that there's a central concern in anthropology about how people adapt to things like new cultures and changing environments, shifting social norms. Public libraries are very actively support this kind of adaptation because they offer language training, literacy programs, digital literacy training, access to social services, community resources, and they provide programming that fosters cross-cultural understanding. So I think all of these things come together, these three different aspects, to make a strong connection that the public library is a great space to do cultural anthropology. And you could view and do the actions at the public library in so many different ways, from so many different perspectives, culturally, economically, demographically, however you wanted to come at it, there would be observable interaction and people. And so, it's frequently essential space, it's a third space. And because of those two things, I think it makes a great anthropology lab.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I really appreciate your perspectives on that, Dr. L. I my very first job, was at a library,
Oh,
and
very cool.
very first job. And I worked in the children's department and, was a page, right? Page one, started as page one. And even prior to that, what led me, to be more, inquire about a position there was because I utilized the library quite frequently as a patron, right? I did my homework at a library. My mom would drop me off for hours, and I'd be there for hours, looking at books and reading books and engaging with people. And when Susette asked about kind of the future of libraries, that is no longer how people use libraries, right? They don't go there to do research.
No, people do,
Well, I
but
should say
it's not as it's not
common.
nearly what it used to be.
Not at all. Not at all. And it's also sometimes the third space for people who are, homeless, who need shelter, who people who are not are maybe digitally disconnected and they want to go there for, to use the electronic devices. So when I'm curious to know with those three areas that you named, what are some of the very specific programs and ways in which we can engage communities and people with more robustly utilizing the libraries, and how can libraries provide a more updated and elevated service that matches the kind of where the trajectory that we're going in our culture.
Sure. Um, you know, I go back to a phrase that I learned a long time ago. Um, Libraries aren't made, they grow. They become what the community needs it to be. And I think as part of that process, um, public libraries and libraries in general, for that matter, um, have to be a place that not only are safe for people to come, but are viewed as constructive places to come. And so, because libraries kind of operate at the intersection of a couple of key things. There's individual identity formation, community integration, and institutional systems navigation that programs, languages, other things that bring the people together in the libraries create this kind of targeted intersection of spaces. And so how do we
Just
target
for our
that?
listeners, I'm sorry, but just for our listeners, you said a lot of words that don't really mean anything to me as a non-librarian. So maybe kind of go back to those descriptors and break it down for a layman.
Sure. Um, Individual identity formation. These are programs that help people understand who they are, how they place themselves in society, how they place themselves in their interactions. Individual identity formation is especially important for underserved communities, for people who don't feel safe in general public.
Like
Their
LGBT
programs,
stuff communities and yeah.
And what does it look like? What is it like to me as a person? How would I experience that?
sure.
Or how does that come to life for me? I mean, how would I formulate my identity going to a library? What does that look like in today's world?
What does that look like in today's world? Is
Yeah.
we bring in people. Well, I can't say I'm not where I used to be, but when I was there at my last place, we brought in people who not only could do programming and entertain, but we brought in people to educate and to build capacity. So we brought in people who could help people understand who they were, not just present a program about here are 3 or 4 personality types and we're going to try to get you into a type. We would bring in somebody who would help the person explore and find out where they sat. And so you have programming that helps with identifying preferences and characteristics and other things that help a person understand who they are or who they want to be.
Right.
And so
And
those kind of programs can vary, but they're frequently programs where we're bringing people in who not only can provide an educational point, but provide a connectivity between the people.
so let me interject. So, for example, here in Oklahoma, there is a long history of freedmen, meaning Black people who became freed sometime during their time here in Oklahoma, and Native American tribes. And many Native American tribes historically distanced themselves, refused to allow African Americans, freedmen, to be a part of the tribes for a variety of reasons, i.e., they didn't have a high enough blood quantum. It was political, whatever the case may be. Now, there amongst most libraries here in Oklahoma, there is a consistent push because many tribes here in Oklahoma are realizing, oh my gosh, so many of the people that we had in our tribes that were 100% whatever the tribe is, that blood quantum doesn't exist anymore. So Native Americans are the only ethnic group that your identity is based on your blood quantum. And so if you are 20% whatever the tribe is, they're now interested in you being a part of their tribe, even if you look like me or Dr. R, because if the blood quantum degrees have dropped so significantly, they don't have enough members in their tribe to continue.
Right.
And so that's part of the identity that Dr. L is talking about.
Yeah,
True.
and I'm just kind of like wanting to get super clear about the role that libraries play, because what was the role in that libraries played actually? Was it hosting a workshop? Was
Yeah.
it doing
So it's
field
venue,
work
it's
support?
venue.
Like let's get super clear
Yeah.
about
Sure.
the role, because you're saying words, but it's not connecting the dots to actually the specific practices and the specific offerings that libraries actually were forefronting, right? So that they can connect the dots. That's where I want to get super clear for our listeners.
So yeah,
Okay.
venues are one, workshops
Then,
are
yeah.
another. Yeah, the libraries, most libraries have so much information, like books. I mean, any format you can think of. So from a practical point of view, it makes sense to have conversations between freedmen and Native American tribes, for example, at a library or some type of space, a history center, something like that.
Mhm,
So when questions come up, there's points of reference.
mhm,
In addition, you have presenters, sometimes that are library staff,
mhm.
that
Yes.
can help connect those dots, that can help, in this case, help freedmen to identify themselves on Dawes roles. Like, how do I find myself on this role? I was told 20, 30 years ago I didn't exist, but how can you help me? Things like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
those are the kind of things we do. I can give you some examples of things that we did in Oklahoma. When the Afghan refugees came into town, one of the things we did was reach out to them and work with groups to help provide sewing machines because the people coming over were very home industry driven, and they made their own clothes, but it was also part of who they were, and they made items to be sold to generate income. And so when they came here, they had nothing. And so we reached out with CARE and other groups in the Oklahoma City area, and we brought people together so that used sewing machines could go to these people to help them get back to who they were. So, in reference to Native Americans, we collected material in languages which are very quickly dying away in many places. We would bring in speakers, we would bring in dancers, We would bring in people who not only could tell you what the cultural aspect was, but could demonstrate it for you and provide you an opportunity to participate in it. And then they could then connect you to other people in the community that have similar interests. We had programs where we brought in Holocaust survivors, and we brought in different people who have had different life experiences to come in and talk about how their experiences have shaped who they are and what they've become since the trauma in their life. We've had people who came in and demonstrated arts and crafts of different groups who would then, you could then take that art and craft home, or you could learn that skill and take it home and do it yourself to help a particular aspect, such as like sand painting for Native Americans and things like that. So we would provide a space. We would provide sometimes equipment. We would provide staff time. We would provide other additional resources. But one of the aspects that made all of this possible was not only did we learn the collections in our buildings, but we learned our communities and who was living where, so that when we did need something, we could reach out to someone who had authentic and organic connections with the community that we were hoping to work with. We did this with the growing Asian American community in Oklahoma City. We did this with the Vietnamese community when we were putting together a new library location. We brought them in. We talked to them about their culture. What are the culturally significant, important colors? What were the types of designs that were important to them culturally? And we brought that into the design of the building so that people could feel at home. You know, sometimes it's not just we have meeting space or we have a collection, but sometimes we have to create home. And we do that frequently by listening to what our community tells us. Again, libraries aren't made, they grow. And they have to grow in alignment with the way their community grows as well. And part of what the libraries do to that is play facilitator. They play collaborator. They play network agent so that they can bring people together who don't know about each other so that they can then connect. And they can bond over the program or they can bond over the resource, but they can also bond over the space that they're in because it's now a new place. You know, one of the little simple things we did at this location to help people feel at home in the Vietnamese community was we replaced the wall on the front of the building with glass so that they could see inside and know that it was safe. It's a simple thing, but if people don't feel safe, if people don't feel like the space that they're coming to is comfortable for them, then they don't come. And so, you know, what libraries do, I'm using a lot of big words, and that's part of my, I'm a recovering professor. So occasionally I throw out stuff, just ignore it. To get down to the
We're here to help keep this real. We want to keep it real and accessible so that people can really, really, really utilize this information and knowledge. That's what we want to do, right?
Yeah. And you know, what was part of the growth part for the library and all of this was COVID. We were used to everybody walking in the door. We were used to people coming to us. And yes, we did go out into the community. We would do presentations. We would go to conferences. We would go to programs that other groups were doing. Absolutely. But when COVID hit, we had to learn how to do almost everything all over again because we not only had to serve the people who walked through the door, but we had to serve the people who clicked on the website. And how did we bring connectivity to them? one of the first things we did is we put a uh, reading to kids uh, in front of dogs program online. We figured out how to do that online so that the kid could be at home but still feel like they were sitting there reading to the dog, because the reading to the dog programs have generated such evidence to show that kids really get into it. Their readings abilities get better. But this was one of the first things we did. We identified a group of people that really needed something quickly. And so we took something we did. We had, I don't know, 15 or 20 reading pairs of handlers and dogs that we would bring into the community to actually put in libraries and other places where kids and families could come and participate. But during COVID, we had to figure out how to bring us to them. And so, part of this equation is not only being able to make people feel at home in the building, but we also have to make them feel at home online so that they can connect to us however they can connect to us. And so those are the kinds of individual things that libraries do. And I am just brushing the surface. This is just me winging it off the top of my head. But libraries do so much activity to preserve culture, to enhance culture, to train people uh, to embrace their culture. We collect in multiple languages. We make information resources available in a wide latitude of formats and languages. And we do that so that people feel comfortable that
I
they're,
love that. I
and
love that. I
so
think
those are
that
the things we do.
I think that what you're starting to peel back, right, or kind of really help us to get some insight into is how the library is really, well, first of all, we need to acknowledge how, there's nothing like a pandemic or a global, kind of, you know, issue to, or a rupture really, to help us with our shifts, right? To help us shift. And sometimes it's a welcome shift, and sometimes it's an unwelcome shift, but it's a shift that's necessary and that we may have been resisting up until that time, right? And so, what I really do appreciate you starting to give us some insight to is how the library system institution is coming up to the 21st century, right? And starting to respond to the needs of our culture in ways that are much more in alignment with how we engage in other domains in corporate America, right? In schools, in higher ed. And I love that reflection of that.
And so
I think,
I just want
go
to
ahead.
piggyback on the things that you all are saying. Um, Larry, you brought up, excuse me, Dr. L. I got to work on that. You brought up about the Holocaust. In Oklahoma, most people still have the stereotype that this is the Bible Belt, which suggests that there are no other religious or cultural experiences outside of Christianity. There is a huge and growing atheist community here in Oklahoma, and there is an extremely robust Jewish communities, plural. Um, and so libraries, as Larry said, not just with that community, all different types of communities have worked diligently to push against, and I'm going to use yet another stereotype. And side note, for those that don't know, I have a background in librarianship as well, was a director of a library, and finding ways to blend library and anthropology together, and so do cultural archival as well. Um, Many people have the stereotype of the librarian with the glasses at the end of her nose, not a male, but a female, bun, and wagging her finger at them for owing 25 cents. And so, see, you laugh because you
No,
know.
it's
For being quiet.
Right, or
Shh.
the shh, right. And
uh,
so part of, and this was happening before the height of the pandemic, libraries collectively were working diligently to say, yeah, that's our past. That's not us anymore.
no,
Ah, so you're saying that libraries were starting to recognize that they had like a branding issue and were
Huge,
launching PR campaigns, so to speak,
huge,
right?
huge.
To
And
shift the image
yeah,
of
yeah,
what
and
a
not only the
library
image, the experience.
and the experience.
to
you,
to position this space that is literally not just all over the country. You can go anywhere in the world and there is a library. Anywhere
right,
in the world. It could be somebody's backyard hut, or it could be this huge system that spans
Mm,
over counties. It could be city owned, it could be private owned. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The commitment collectively, right around the early 2000s, so right at the turn of the 21st century, was we have a branding issue.
got it.
And not only
yeah,
do we have a branding issue, people still think that, like you said, you have to be quiet and understand most, if even academic libraries, you can use your indoor voice. Outdoor voice needs to stay outdoors. So clear about that. And I have done several presentations about that librarian with the glasses, and I say she is has retired in Florida, living her best life.
Mhm.
that's
Librarians
true.
look like me at that time, look like Larry, because I also said most people, when they think of a library, they don't think of a man, they think of
No,
female. And Robin and I, out of the three of us, we represent the majority as it relates to gender within the context of libraries. It's
absolutely.
libraries is where information lives. And so it makes very practical sense to not only blend in anthropological methods and understandings, it's about outreach, it's about understanding your community. Because if you don't, it will be like 20th century and past libraries where it's just a page, and I don't even think we use that, or libraries use that language anymore of a page. But yeah, that the times of just this squeaky cart going because that's pretty much all you would hear because there was such a phobia, such an
Yeah.
anxiety of going in. And so context,
Mm.
libraries began in higher ed. It was meant for the privileged. Information was meant for the privileged. So if you couldn't go to college, you didn't have access. So people like Andrew Carnegie, and if you don't know him, Google him, a huge philanthropist, and several others were like, you know what? This needs to be made available to the public. How do we do this? Well, they did that. Him and several other people created public libraries. And in the process of them doing that, they took those experiences of higher ed, i.e., wagging your finger, your finger being wagged, someone wagging their finger at you because you owe fines of 25 cents or whatever, because it was a certain status of class. Like to have access to information meant that you were higher up, you were smart, you weren't part of the poor people. Well, public involves everybody.
And you have to go back to, in talking about cultural anthropology, the library roots in this go back a long way. When we had the great migrations into the United States, one of the first places that would reach out to new immigrants coming in was the public library. And it became it picked up the nickname of the public university because you could go there and learn about your new culture here in the United States. You could go there and still read books and learn how to speak English, but you could also practice your own language. It was a way of helping people acculturate into society here. while also giving them the ability to preserve their own culture. And so libraries have been doing this since the late 1800s, especially through up till the World War II period. Libraries were the first ones to go out and start reaching out to the homeless. Libraries were some of the first groups to go out and start reaching out to immigrants who didn't speak English, but were now living here and trying to function. And so libraries have got a long history of doing this. Now, one of the other factors that has kind of started before COVID, but was kind of exacerbated by COVID, was that many of the other places where people can go to experience culture closed.
Like what? Give us some examples of those places.
Well, museums shut down. Places where,
Oh,
restaurants, you couldn't go to restaurants
that's
anymore. There were some churches that didn't have in-person services. They transitioned to being completely online. There were a lot of things that happened, different places and spaces that became unavailable. And some closed because of economic reasons, some closed they couldn't create the necessary requirements to be able to get people to there and be safe during the COVID time. But also too, more and more government services are being the responsibilities of many of those government services are now being picked up by nonprofits and other types of agencies. And when the economy gets bad, when COVID gets bad, those agencies get strained beyond belief. And so they don't have the resource to pick up the capacity. But historical research shows that when the economy gets bad and life gets kind of problematic here in this country, the public library usage goes up. The activity goes up. The engagement from the community goes up because it's a place where they can go. And it's one of the few places they can go in the community where we don't ask them for money up front. You can come in for free. We don't charge you just to walk through the door.
right.
So this is a place that lays that foundation of being home, that creates a safe place. And that's one of the things that libraries have done. We started off as kind of an elitist group of people. We absolutely did. Mm-hmm. It was for rich white guys. Mm-hmm. All right.
Like anthropology without the rich. Yeah.
Yeah. But libraries soon became the cultural anchors for many communities. They became those cultural labs where people from different backgrounds would get together and you would discover that people may be different, but you had more in common than you had different. This is how we built, what became kind of the American identity and the American culture, was that we synthesized and brought people together. And a little bit of this culture and a little bit of this language and a little bit of this came together to represent a greater whole. But in doing that, especially over the last 40 or 50 years, libraries have understood that, yes, it's important to be able to bring people together into that greater identity. But you also have to preserve who people are and what their culture is, and you do that through language provision, you do that through arts and crafts, you do that through programming to help people celebrate their cultural traditions. And this is something that libraries have really accelerated. If you were picked up out of the 1960s or 1970s and magically dropped into a 2020s public library, you wouldn't know the place.
No.
It's very different than what people assume. And the stereotype is still strong, especially out of Hollywood. Almost any movie you see that has a librarian has a bun person. At one point I used to have a little bun that I would put on the back, had a pencil through it so that I could feel like I was, blending in with people. I don't know whatever happened to it. I think I ended up losing it in a move somewhere. But Libraries are a safe place to practice culture.
And
Um,
I want to tie into what you were talking about in the 60s, because that was during the time of the civil rights movement. And
that's
so
right.
prior to that was segregation. And so Oklahoma, like most states, had segregated libraries.
That's right.
There was a lot of tension amongst libraries of, this is a public space, and having to accommodate, excuse me, to follow the laws of that community, that it had to be segregated, although that was not the desire in most spaces.
That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's been a group in our history of this country where there's always been a group that we've tried to keep out, that we've tried to prevent from assimilating, from joining our culture. And libraries have become one of those opening salvos in the fight to help preserve culture, to help integrate culture, to give people a chance to experience culture. Because again, so many other places um, haven't been able to, stay around through COVID and economics and government funding and all these other places that supported arts programs and music programs. So much of it now has been turned over to groups and agencies who have to generate a revenue so that they can keep their doors open. And not everybody in the community can do that. And that's what makes public libraries, especially out of the library groups, makes them a place for culture to be preserved, engaged, and built upon in a way that helps the library grow. Again, libraries aren't made, they grow. And they grow into what the community needs them to be. And right now, many communities need public libraries to grow into being that cultural lab, being that cultural center or facilitator, because there are limited other places where they can experience these opportunities at a no cost barrier.
And
Well,
library.
I know one thing. I
Oh,
can say this one thing about that. I am so like I brag about the library being my first job. It contributed just even before that, it contributed so much to my imagination development, my ability to kind of be literate and expand my vocabulary in ways that I probably wouldn't have been able to. And also, I just, to your point, you were using the word of feeling like they're home. And what came up for me is just belonging, because I can see myself reflected in books and my imagination reflected in books and even my aspirations and hopes reflected in books. So it saddens me that some of our youth, especially, don't have that same experience with libraries right now. And
and a lot of
and
that is because of the height of the pandemic. I mean, that isolated.
before then, though,
Fair,
Suzette, we used to
fair,
hang out at the library. That
fair,
was a hangout.
fair,
So,
very fair,
it wasn't like it was a hangout place. So
very
I'm
fair.
just saying that I hope that my hope is that we can start to continue with that shift and give fuel that shift so that we can just deepen the impact in our different cultures.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
libraries have worked consistently since the expansion of technology, of not only positioning themselves in their lane as it relates to tech, because like for example, Dr. R and I, we didn't grow up with cell phones in our hands. We hung out
I
at the
didn't either.
right. We hung with that fair. We hung out at the library. And so when technology began to grow and shift and more, libraries had to find their lane. And now that that lane has been found, how do we expand? How is that expanded in a way where people that are growing up with technology in their hand can find space for that technology and a book?
That's right.
Right.
It's not a
And
or, it's creating those and spaces.
exactly. You
Yeah.
know, and part of that is people have to see themselves not only in the building as a place that's safe, but they also have to see people in the building that are similar to them. And so library staff, uh, libraries have been trying for a long time to try to get people who work in libraries to be more reflective of the communities they serve.
Mhm.
And the other aspect of something that we do, and I'll just use my previous experience real quick again. We wanted to make sure that we were providing effective engagement of our collection by populations in the OKC area. So we had outside assessment brought in and analyze our collection and check it for cultural referencing, for making sure that we had a broad coverage of every major group in the area in terms of the language we provided, the format we provided. And we had it checked for different aspects of cultural consideration. And we wanted to make sure that if you came to the library and you spoke Martian, we had something that we could give you, or we had a place that we could send you, or we had a flyer, we had something that could connect you. And we did pretty well. We weren't perfect. We certainly had room to improve, but we found that our collection very well represented the major demographic groups in the OKC area. But we worked to do better because we wanted people to not only be able to practice and learn, but we also wanted people to see other people so that they feel again at home.
So Larry, we've actually got time for one more question.
Sure.
And I know, well, I think this would be a hard question for any one of us. And one of these times I'm going to ask this of you, Dr. R. What's one of your favorite books?
I will tell you, I I will tell you that I was built by a non-union hillbilly electrician when I was born, and I'm not normal. I do things that are probably a little strange. And I have heard of people in their lifetimes who read dictionaries because they want to learn the words. They want to learn what the words mean,
Etymology. Yeah.
right? All right. I don't read the dictionary. I read quotation books, Bartlett's or other sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
I love to read them because what it does is I move from words to ideas. I move from words to feelings. And I can learn what people were thinking through time by reading the quotes, by looking at what the subjects are and how they comment. Teaches me a lot about life because it provides people from all different backgrounds, from all different locations, and all different times. And if you've got a really well put together book of quotations, and it doesn't have to be Bartlett's, there's a lot of other really good ones out there. I sit and read quotations because to me, it's a way of not only learning, but learning in a very diverse way about the world that's around me and how history and how culture and how other factors have made us who we are. And in the short term, narrow for me, who I am.
Thank you. And so moving forward and speaking in the spirit of Dr. R and even Dr. L of making this, Dr. L said he's a recovering professor. So he tends, so, and Dr. R, making sure that the audience that hears this, it's understandable. Here's my call to action to you. If you don't have a library card, go get one. It's free. Go there and make a commitment to check out a book, Sit and watch people for an hour. See what kind of programming is available. And comment, post what your experience is. In a very small way, you are experiencing, and I just forgot the language you used, Dr. L, of libraries as a cultural lab. There we
Cultural laboratory.
go, a cultural laboratory. Share your experience of using the library as a cultural laboratory, and talk about what kind of access did you get by getting that free card? And what did you experience? What did you see? What what human beings came across your path that you've never seen before? What did they say? What did they do? What made them different than what you've ever seen before? And just post your comment,
Yeah,
Doctor,
and test your assumptions.
and test your assumptions and question those stereotypes because we all have them. We all have them. We all have biases. And I know all of us, if not most of us, have done the bias training and da 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 da. And we all still have work to do. Dr.
Agreed.
L, thank you for your time.
Thank you for the invitation. It's been marvelous. I've really enjoyed. And Dr. R, it was a pleasure to meet you
Same
and
here.
pleasure to understand more about you and the podcast. And I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.